The night was long and mercilessly dark when Adil took the steering wheel of his old Suzuki Marin and began his journey from Lahore to Multan. It was almost midnight, the kind of time when silence feels alive and every shadow seems to breathe. The highway stretched endlessly before him, a thin silver ribbon cutting through the blackness. He rolled down the window to let in some air, but the wind felt unusually cold for that season. He turned on the radio, but it gave only static, a broken whisper that made him uneasy. There was no moon that night, only a faint glow of stars swallowed by heavy clouds. After an hour of driving, he saw a faint figure by the roadside. A woman, dressed in white, waving her hand as if asking for help. Adil slowed down instinctively. As his headlights illuminated her face, his heart skipped a beat. She looked pale, almost translucent, her hair disheveled, her eyes wide and lost. He rolled down the window a little and asked if she needed help. Her lips moved, but her voice was too faint to hear. He unlocked the passenger door, and she quietly slipped in without a sound. The smell of damp earth and something metallic filled the car. He tried to start a conversation, asking where she was headed. She looked at him and whispered, "Home." He nodded nervously and kept driving. But after a few minutes, when he glanced at her again, she was gone. The seat beside him was empty. He slammed the brakes, the car screeching to a stop in the middle of the highway. His breath came fast. The door was still locked. She couldn't have left. Then he noticed something chilling. The seat was wet, as if someone had been sitting there soaked in rainwater. Trembling, he turned his eyes toward the rearview mirror, and saw her face staring back from the back seat. He screamed and hit the accelerator, driving blindly until he reached a petrol station miles away. The workers found him pale and shaking. When they checked his car, they saw muddy footprints leading from the back seat to the trunk, but there was no one inside. Later, when Adil told the police, they mentioned a woman who had died on that same stretch of highway 2 years ago, while hitchhiking home. A truck driver named Wasim was used to long hauls across the barren roads of Baluchistan. The isolation never bothered him, until one stormy night when his routine trip turned into a nightmare. The wind howled, and sand whipped across the windshield, limiting his view. Around 3 a.m., he stopped near an old milestone to rest his eyes for a moment. That's when he heard knocking, soft but rhythmic, from outside his cabin. He turned on his torch and peered out. Nothing. The empty highway stretched endlessly, not a single soul in sight. He shook his head, thinking it was just his imagination. Then, as he leaned back, the knocking came again, but this time from the passenger side window. He froze. Slowly, he turned his head. A man's face pressed against the glass, pale, with hollow eyes and lips moving soundlessly. Wasim jumped, grabbing the handle of the door, but when he blinked, the face was gone. He started his truck in panic and began driving fast. The radio turned on by itself, static giving way to a faint whisper, "Don't leave me here." His heart pounded. He switched it off, but the whispering continued, now coming from inside the cabin. When he looked at the passenger seat, he saw muddy footprints, but no one was sitting there. Hours later, when he finally reached a truck stop, his fellow drivers noticed claw marks on his windshield and blood stains near the door. Wasim never drove that route again. The locals say the spirit of a murdered traveler roams that road, begging passing drivers to take him home, but those who stop never reach their destination. In 2018, a group of university friends, Sana, Bilal, and Taha, decided to drive from Karachi to Hyderabad for a weekend trip. The road was smooth, and laughter filled the car as they played music and shared snacks. Everything was fine until they took a shortcut through an older, less used road to save time. The GPS showed it was clear, but the surroundings changed quickly. No lights, no cars, only a long stretch of cracked asphalt and barren land. Halfway through, their headlights caught something strange, an overturned car by the roadside. It looked old and rusted, as if it had been there for decades. Bilal slowed down to check if anyone needed help, but Sana insisted they move on. As they passed by, Taha suddenly gasped. "Did you see that? There was someone inside." Bilal stopped and reversed. Sure enough, through the broken window, they saw a man slumped over the steering wheel. They got out with their phones' flashlights, calling out to him, but the air felt unnaturally still. When Bilal touched the door handle, it crumbled into dust. The car wasn't real, it was rotted to the frame, like something that had been abandoned for half a century. Confused and scared, they turned back toward their car, only to find the engine running and the headlights blinking on and off by themselves. Then, a low male voice whispered from the darkness, "Why did you wake me?" Sana screamed, and they jumped into their car, driving as fast as possible. The road behind them seemed endless, repeating the same mile markers again and again, as if they were trapped in a loop. When they finally burst onto the main highway, dawn was breaking. They looked behind, the shortcut road had vanished. Later, when they told a police officer, he said no such road existed anymore. It was closed years ago after a fatal accident. The driver's name on that report matched the one they'd seen on the rusted license plate. The final story belonged to an old bus driver named Rafiq, who had been driving night routes between Islamabad and Peshawar for 20 years. He had heard all kinds of tales from passengers, ghosts, jinns, missing travelers, but he never believed any of them. Until one night in December. It was cold, and fog blanketed the road so thick he could barely see 10 feet ahead. The passengers were asleep, and the rhythmic hum of the bus engine echoed through the mist. Around 2 a.m., as the bus passed through a particularly desolate stretch near Atak, Rafiq noticed a faint red light blinking ahead. Thinking it was a car hazard light, he slowed down. But when he reached the spot, there was no car, only an old man standing in the middle of the road holding a lantern. Rafiq hit the brakes and shouted, "Baba, move aside." But the man didn't. Instead, he slowly raised his hand and pointed toward the left, where a narrow dirt path led into the darkness. Then he vanished. The passengers stirred, confused. Rafiq's hands trembled on the wheel. He didn't know why, but something made him steer left. Barely 30 seconds later, the ground beneath them shook. A massive landslide crashed onto the main road, exactly where they would have been. The passengers screamed and wept. Rafiq got out, searching for the old man, but there were no footprints in the mud. Days later, when rescuers cleared the debris, they found an old lantern buried under the rocks, identical to the one Rafiq had seen. Locals later told him of a villager who had died years ago trying to warn drivers of that same landslide. They said his spirit still guards that road, saving those who listen. From that night on, Rafiq never doubted the whispers of the highway. Because on those endless, silent roads, not every traveler is alive, and not every warning comes from the living.